Today I'm going to present the conservation and utilization of fishery resources in the East China Sea. China has 4 coastal seas from the north to the south. They are Bohai Sea, Yellow Sea, East China Sea, and the South China Sea. And East China Sea has the highest fishery production. But all these 4 coastal seas are subject to national management regulations. So instead of talking specifically about East China Sea, I would focus on the fishery resources in China's coastal waters, while mainly in the East China Sea under national regulations. This photo was taken on August 1st, 2016, and it shows fishing vessels setting from the fishing port of Shenjiamen, Zhejiang Province, and the seasonal moratorium on marine fishing ended and vessels were ready to go fishing in the East China Sea. Due to the years of overfishing in the China's coastal waters, the quantity as well as quality of fishery resources decreased, and the fishing patterns for domestic fishing vessels have also changed. Instead of catching high-valued large fishery resources, they start to aim on whatever left in the sea, and trash fish have become their main targets, and these trash fish cannot be consumed mainly directly by human beings. They can only be used for agriculture. So that's a loss of marine fishery resources. Due to the resection of China's fishery resources in 2016, I think, the Ministry of Agriculture of China launched the plan for reducing domestic fishery reproduction. And the domestic marine production is required to reduce about a quarter from more than 13 million tons to less than 10 million tons within 5 years since 2050. But if we go back to 50 years ago, before 1970s, China was still a small fishing country with low fishing capacity, and the development of China's fishery industry can also be reflected by the changes of fishing vessels. And from this slide, we can see that the changes of fishing vessels from before 1970s to nowadays. In the mid of 1970s, the domestic fishery production was only about 3 million tons in China, and which is very far below the estimated maximum sustainable yield, which was 8 to 10 million tons per year. And in 1985, the number 5 central document was implemented, and in the next year, 1986, fishery laws became effective. And these 2 documents became the turning points for China's fishery industry. So in 1995, after 10 years after the number 5 central document, the fishery resources production in China's domestic waters was 10 million tons, and it continued to increase in an unsustainable way. With the encouragement of legal forces, the fishery production and fishing power have both experienced a period of continued growth, and After the year in 1999, the fishery production became almostly constant, and the fishing power continued to increase. That is to say that to maintain the level of marine catches, China has invested more and more fishing capacity, and the output per unit of input has gradually declined. Meanwhile, the trophic level of marine catch has also declined in China, and in the work we have did for East China Sea, we can see that a clear decline trend was found in the East China Sea. And East China Sea was not an exception, because in the work we just did for the Bohai Sea, there has also been a decline in the mean trophic level of statistic catch data. And a more significant decline was found in the mean trophic level of the biomass data, which means that with the statistic catch data we can usually get, it already masks the mean trophic level decline at some extent, but we can still see the trend. In addition, we did yield per recruit analysis for 10 exploited species in China's coastal seas. And these 10 exploited species included not only traditional commercial species, but also some less commercial interest species. And the result revealed that all these 10 species suffered from growth overfishing. You can see this. Okay. You can see the current fishing pond was here, and if you want, and if we want to get the maximum yield per recruit, we need to go this way or go that way. That is to say, neither we should decrease our fishing activity or to increase the size of our fishing net. Except for the human activities like fishing activities, the ocean warming has also had huge impacts on the catch composition of China's coastal seas. We use the concept of mean temperature of the catch concept to test the global warming effect on the Chinese coastal waters catches, and we found that in the Yellow Sea and the East China Sea, there were increased trends for the mean temperature of the catch, and the increase of mean temperature of the catch has had a good relationship with the sea surface temperature. So, due to the recession of Chinese coastal waters fishery resources, Chinese government has begun to management its domestic fishing. First step is the summer fishing moratoria. Summer fishing moratoria was implemented in the Bohai Sea, Yellow Sea, and East China Sea since 1995, and it began to be implemented in the South China Sea in 1999, and it also underwent a period of from from the short period to a long period. Before 2017, the start dates of summer fishing moratoria always began in June or July, but since 2017, the starting dates were advanced to May 1st, so which makes the summer fishing moratoria will last for about 4 or 4.5 months for some coastal areas. And also some fishing gear management were implemented, like ban of destructive fishing methods and the regulations about minimum mesh size of fishing nets and minimum catch size of fishing touches and the proportion limit of undersighted fish in the catch. In 2015, Zhejiang Province first launched a plan limiting the size at capture and juvenile proportion of 18 king marine species. After that, 3 years later, a national regulation was issued for limiting size of capture and juvenile proportion of 15 king marine species. Moreover, some fishing vessel managements were also implemented, like since 1987, China has started to control the number of fishing boats as well as fishing power, which was called the double control system, and fishing vessels require effective certificates and fishing licenses to conduct their fishing activities. And in 2002, China implemented a fishing boat buyback plan and used decommissioning subsidies to encourage fishermen to scrap their old fishing boats. Since 2003, China has also begun implementing the policy of helping fishermen to transfer their jobs. But all the effects of these regulations have been covered by fuel subsidies. Fuel subsidies was issued in 2006, and it aimed to improve fishermen's incomes, to augment domestic fish supplies, and to raise foreign exchange through exports. One-time subsidies of vessel buyback program cannot be compared with the huge amount of fuel subsidies every year. So instead of help to control the fishing activities in China's coast waters, subsidies are becoming the major factor in overfishing and have damaged a lot to the fishery resources in coastal waters. But we also have some good news. In 2016, the Xi Jinping, President Xi, proposed ecological civilization, and it has become a guiding development principle in China. First, the Ministry of Agriculture developed the 5-year plan for fisheries, which was released in 2016, and it focused on the modernization of the traditional fishing industry, sustainable agriculture, marine environment protection, and the sustainable use of wild fish resources. Also, there appeared to be a stronger commitment toward accountability, compliance, enforcement of regulations, monitoring, and transparent reporting on China's marine fisheries. As we have mentioned earlier, that is the seasonal fishing moratoria, and the strictest one since 2017. And both area and number of national marine protected areas increased in East China Sea during last 2 decades. And the second figure, we can see the number of composition and distribution of national marine protected areas in East China Sea. And for fuel subsidies by 2019, the total national fuel subsidies to fisheries will fall to 40% of the 2014 level, and local authorities are encouraged to accelerate progress of the reform and appropriately increase the reduction ratio. And this figure shows the trend of fuel subsidies for fishing vessels in Shandong province in 2015 and is planned in 2019. In addition, China's State Oceanic Administration is introducing a new system of marine ecological red line regions, which will delineate the specific boundaries between shoreline development areas and ecological protected zones. In the meantime, instead of working alone, China is seeking the opportunity to cooperate with other countries. In 2013, President Xi proposed the concept of maritime Silk Road, aiming to promote the international cooperation on ocean issues. And this includes like joint protection of migratory endangered species and work together against climate change. And it also includes some other aspects which I didn't show here. But we can conclude that there are serious problems with fishery resources in China, and the government is well aware of them and willing to solve them. However, it still has a long way to go. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Just to add, Professor Polly has given his some drive contents his papers and also corresponding papers from Dr. Liang, sorry. If you are interested in getting the paper, please approach our organizer to get a copy of it. So now the floor is open. Please feel free.
So regarding the extended summer moratorium, which was extended in 2017, if the aim was to allow for the fish to grow because of growth overfishing, do you think extending the period is actually an effective measure to prevent that if overfishing already occurs during the moratorium?
Yeah. Okay. The seasonal fishing moratorium aims to give fish enough time for growth and reproduction. And since last year, we have prolonged the period of this system, but no matter how many months we implemented for the seasonal fishing moratoria, after the fishing boats are allowed to go fishing again, almost in 1 month, the effect of this program will be dismissed. Yeah, so I don't think it's a very effective way to protect fishery resources, but I won't blame my government, because if I can't do a better job, and they have to find a balance point for the life of fishermen and the protection of the marine fishery resources. So maybe we will find some better way in the future, but now we can do as best as we can.
Thanks. I was just interested in the relocation program that you mentioned, and maybe it hasn't been successful because of the subsidies, but it's obviously a big issue if you want to have vessels numbers down. I was wondering if you have any more information about that.
I am so sorry that I'm not expert about fishery management, and I think the government is trying to help the fishermen to find a new way for their living, to train them some new skills, but for the fishermen, they have dealt with their lifetime with the sea, and it's very hard for them to transfer their jobs, and for people living just near the sea, fishing is the only thing they knew and they can do. So it will be hard to implement this program, but I think if we give them some more time, they can do better.
Thank you very much. I have a question about how some of these measures, for example, reducing mesh size, having some kind of control on the proportion of undersized fish, etc. How will that be balanced against the growing need to catch small fish for feed for mariculture? I think it was mentioned yesterday about the Greenpeace report, which estimated that about 50%, half of the trawler catch is used for mariculture feed, and of course a lot of those are very small fish, and they use very small mesh size. So is there any discussion about how to balance, say, the need for feed, let's say, and against the need to catch larger fish for food directly? Because I think that's quite a challenge.
Yeah, I know. And the trash fish which are used for farming, it's not a solution. I mean, if agriculture costs so much about our fishery resources, we need to find the other way. I mean, shift from the species that we are farming. I mean, the main target is to protect the ocean fishery resources. If agriculture is doing something really bad to it, we have to switch it to.
Thank you for your talk. You've done a really good job of describing how putting China's fisheries management on a sustainable footing is a really wicked problem. It's very difficult. So let me ask you a difficult question, if I may. If you had the power of President Xi Jinping, and yet the knowledge of a fisheries scientist that you are, what's the most important thing you think you could do to improve this situation?
Sorry.
As I just said, I can't promise I can do a better job. But what I can do, I think, is to
become Xi Jinping. How about getting rid of subsidies?
Yeah. That's
David's question is too tough, I think.
sorry.
So, can I ask, it's interesting do we know that the how much resources from the natural fish resources have been used for agriculture, maritime agriculture, or freshwater agriculture?
According to the report from Greenpeace, there are more than 17% of our fishery production are trash fish. These are too small to be directly consumed by human beings. They can only be used for agriculture.
17 natural catch.
70.
Yeah, 17 used to for the agriculture. So that means 80% 17. So it's a 10% of the agriculture is fed by the natural resources, something like that. Is that right?
It's 70.
But 10% of the agriculture protein is fed by the natural fish resources, something like that. Because 80% versus 20% agriculture versus a natural catch, wild catch. So 17.
70.
Yeah, I know, 17 times 0.8. So something like 10% of these agricultural resources from the natural resources, something like that. Is that right?
It certainly means that one cannot add the fish catch plus the mariculture catch. The statistics, you have always, China produce, say, 10 million tons of fish from fisheries plus 6 million tons from aquaculture. But actually, you can have one or the other, but not both. Because if you need the fish from aquaculture, from fisheries to feed aquaculture, you can have one or the other, but you cannot have both.
You're right.
There are lots of people who think that aquaculture is the solution to the world fisheries problem, or to the world's fish consumption problem. But actually, you need fisheries to supply the food for this aquaculture. And yesterday I talked about this problem, that people add up the feed to the capture catch, and in fact, or rather to the mariculture production, but you can have one or the other, not both.
Understand, yeah. You're right.
Recently, some Chinese company, maybe some are also in the foreign company, they try to use the other protein from the soybean protein, try to replace the fish meal. But then some maybe for some species they are successful, some maybe not very successful. Yeah, they start to work on this, I think.
Maybe we have time for one last question.
On one of your slides, you said that it seems like recently there's stronger commitment and stronger accountability to, I think it was the moratorium regulation, maybe other regulations too, but what has given you that impression?
Yes. Yesterday, Daniel mentioned that electronic technique has been used for recording how many fish we catch, and which makes the fishery catches more transparent to the public. I think it's a better way to use technique in the fishing activities, and it will increase the